So a question which people often ask is, how much money do you need to start an Amazon FBA business? And so in this video, I'm going to discuss the different options you can take when setting up an Amazon FBA business, depending on your budget. Now I'm going to break the overall cost of starting an Amazon FBA business into two separate costs: business costs and product costs. Now let's start with the business costs, of which first and foremost you are going to need to register yourself as a business. Now here you have two options when it comes to business registration: sole trader or a limited company. Now I personally set my business up as a limited company, which costs just £12 if you register yourself directly with HMRC. Although if you want, you can ask your accountant to handle the company formation, which is exactly what I did and ended up costing me around £25. Now if you are on a tight budget, you could choose to register the business as a sole trader, in which case you won't have any costs to register a business. Just be mindful that you are personally liable for any losses to a business as a sole trader. Now moving on, you'll need to set up a business bank account in order to keep business and personal funds separate. Now with most banks, they will generally offer a free startup cost for new businesses. You'll likely only start receiving bank fees after a year or two of trading, so for this part it shouldn't cost you a penny. Next, you'll need to register an Amazon professional selling account. Now this costs £30 each month including VAT, and I highly encourage you to opt for the professional selling account instead of the basic selling account, as with the basic selling account you are limited to only 35 sales per month. Now the next part is a logo design, which is completely optional depending on whether or not you plan to sell on Amazon as a reseller or as a private labeler. If you are considering reselling to start, which is exactly what I did, you don't need to bother with a logo design, and therefore there is no expense here. If you are planning to start your own private label product line, you will need to design a logo, of which I recommend hiring a freelancer from Fiverr.com or Upwork. Now generally logo fees range from £10 to £50 depending on the complexity of the design and how many revisions you will need. In example, my logo for my Amazon FBA course, the FBA Series, was only £15 from a freelancer from Upwork. Now moving on, let's look at the cost for product barcodes. Now Amazon recommends that sellers use GS1 barcodes, which is exactly what I use for my product listings. Now the GS1 membership fee is £145 per year and includes up to 1,000 barcodes. Now I completely understand that this fee may be a little bit excessive for those who are on a tight budget, in which case you can request Amazon's approval for GTIN exemption for your product listings, which basically means you don't need a barcode for your product listing. Now I discuss how to apply for GTIN exemption in a different video, but to sum this part up, if your GTIN exemption is approved, you won't need to spend any money on a barcode for your product listing. Now another completely optional cost is the cost of purchasing an online domain. Now if you plan to run traffic to your own Shopify store, you are going to want to purchase a domain to host your website. Now domains are generally not too expensive. You can purchase them through GoDaddy for just $9.99 for your first year. However, if you don't plan to host your own external website, which in all honesty I personally don't, then there is no real need for you to purchase an online domain. Now on the topic of domains, you should consider a new email address to represent your business, as you are going to receive numerous emails from both Amazon and customers, and it always helps to keep business and personal emails separate. Now I personally host my business email using Office 365, which I highly recommend. It's a small monthly subscription of around £5. However, if you want to avoid a monthly ongoing subscription, you can always set up a Hotmail or Gmail email account for your business. Next on the list, I've added accountancy fees. Now this isn't essential at the start of your FBA business whilst you're getting the business up onto its feet. You can quite easily manage your accounts yourself. However, as you grow the business and potentially register for VAT, you'll likely want to consider an accountant to file your tax reports and VAT returns. For an accountant to fully manage your FBA reports, it's likely going to cost you between £75 to £100 per month, depending on the size of your business. Now another optional cost to the business is registering a trademark, which isn't essential for new startups. However, as your business grows, at some point you are likely going to want to enroll with Amazon's brand registry program, of which you will need an active trademark. Now, the actual trademark registration itself is a £170 fee paid to gov.uk. Now, I also hired a trademark expert from Upwork for around £150 to file and oversee my whole trademark application, as this is something I have no experience with. So all in all, to register my trademark, I spent a total of £330, and the whole process took me around 4 months to register. Now, the final business cost that you'll need to consider is a sales estimator in order for you to carry out product research. Now, as I've mentioned in some of my course lectures, I personally use Viral Launch, which costs around £50 per month. And with this subscription, you gain access to the Google Chrome extension tool, which estimates product sales, monthly revenue, reviews, etc. Now, you'll also gain access to the product discovery tool, which helps identify potential products which suit your particular product criteria. However, if you are on a tight budget and you just need to purchase a sales estimator tool, I would recommend considering Helium 10's X-Ray. Now, it costs around £14 per month, and similar to Viral Launch, you'll be able to access the X-Ray Chrome extension in order to review product sales. Okay, so I believe I have covered the main costs related to setting up the actual business. You can see there is quite a difference in the total startup cost. If you are on a tight budget, the figures total just £44, whereas if you went ahead with all of these different costs, the total would be just under £600. Anyway, startup costs aside, the next cost to get involved with Amazon FBA is obviously the cost of product inventory. Now, it's quite difficult to say exactly how much it will cost for your product inventory, as obviously it comes down to the product and how many units you are planning to order. Now, generally, the minimum order quantity for most products is between 250 to 500 units, and I would usually say that first orders can vary from £1,000 to £3,000. Now, for a lower end product, it may cost around £3 per unit to manufacture. Any lower than this, and chances are that product won't retail for much on Amazon. Now, if you are on a tight budget, you'll likely order a relatively small amount of units in order to test the waters, which, for example, let's say the MOQ for this £3 product is 250 units, the total would be £750. Now, on the flip side, some more expensive products may cost around £5 to manufacture and will require a larger order quantity of, let's say, 500 units, so the total inventory cost here would be £2,500. In fact, my first ever Amazon FBA order was around £3,500, which is definitely towards the more expensive end of the spectrum for a first time FBA product order. Now, aside from product inventory, there are some other product costs to consider. First being product samples, which can range from £30 to £150. Now, if the product is small and lightweight and you are just wanting to test one of the supplier's stock samples, these sample orders are relatively inexpensive, usually around £30 to £50. On the other hand, if you are wanting to sample a larger product or even purchase a custom product sample with your branding and custom packaging, you are likely going to be paying more for these samples, which is where these fees can break the £100 mark. Next on the list to consider is product photography. Now, I highly recommend hiring a photographer from the likes of Fiverr or Upwork to professionally shoot a collection of studio and scenario images of your product. Now, prices can vary between £150 to £250 depending on the photographer and how many photos you need for your product images. Now, a cheaper alternative, which I don't recommend unless you have experience with product photography, is to take and edit the photos yourself. Now, you can pick up product light boxes from Amazon for relatively cheap and then edit and manipulate these photos using the likes of Adobe Photoshop. All in all, the DIY method is probably going to cost you around £30 for the equipment and the Photoshop subscription. Now, moving on, you may need to consider your packaging design for your products. Now, if you are on a tight budget, you will likely stick with the manufacturer's standard packaging. Just ensure that it is a good enough quality to safely transport your products to the final customers. However, if you are a private labeler, you will likely consider perhaps branding or customizing your product packaging. Now I would generally hire an expert designer from freelance platforms, which usually charge around £50 to £100. Now another factor to mention is product inserts, which I consider to be an absolute essential to any FBA product in order to scale your product reviews. You can easily design these for free using canva.com and using QR codes to make directing customers to leave that product review that little bit more convenient. Now in terms of printing these product inserts, most suppliers will include product inserts at no extra cost, but for smaller product orders, they may charge you an extra fee for printing, which is usually around £50. Although I don't recommend it, you can choose to ignore product inserts if you are on a very tight budget and don't want to spend any extra money on printing, etc. Now moving on, once the products are manufactured, you may want to have them inspected before making final payment. Now this is completely optional, but I do recommend hiring an inspection company if this is the first time you are dealing with a particular supplier. Now generally, product inspection costs around £100 to £150 depending on how in depth you want that inspection to be. Alibaba currently offers 2 different inspection options for you to choose from, both of which are very good and will provide a professional report for your product inspection. Next, you will need to consider your product shipping, which again varies on the product and the amount of units you are planning to ship. For small, lightweight products, you can generally ship these for around £200 to £250, including duties and taxes, which is known as DDP shipping. For larger, heavier products, shipping can get a little expensive. In this case, the cheapest option is usually by sea, and you can expect to pay anywhere from a couple £100 to a couple £1,000 depending on the order. Now if you agree to other shipping terms such as DDU or CIF, you'll have to factor in custom duties and VAT when importing the product into the country. So in example, let's say your inventory cost is £750 for the products and DDU shipping is £200. The total cost is now £950. Now duties is usually around 5%, so the total now stands at £997.50. Consider 20% VAT on top, that brings the total to £1,197. So just remember to consider these fees if your shipping terms aren't DDP. Now the final part of the actual order to consider is Alibaba's trade assurance fee, which is currently 2.9%. Now I highly recommend paying your suppliers through trade assurance to protect yourself in case anything goes wrong with the order. So for a £1,000 order, the fee would work out at £27, whereas for a £3,000 order, the fee is actually £87. You can, if you want, but again I don't recommend it, make a back payment to your supplier, but I would only consider this if you have past experience and completely trust your supplier. And then last but not least, the final thing you need to consider is your PPC budget in order to advertise your products initially to build your product ranking. Now generally you'll need to run PPC for at least 10 to 14 days to start to build some product momentum. If you're on a tight budget or selling in a niche market, a reasonable daily budget is around £20, which would cost you around £280 for 2 weeks worth of advertising. Now on the other hand, if you are selling in a more competitive market, you'll need to budget more around £40 per day, which would cost you £560 for 2 weeks worth of advertising. With all that being said, that's pretty much it for the essentials. There are some other optional costs, but for new FBA sellers, you'll likely want to keep your initial costs minimal. So let's review everything, taking into account the options for someone who perhaps has a small budget and someone with perhaps a larger budget. So for a small order of £750, the total cost to purchase, ship and launch a product on a small budget comes to £1,317. Now for a larger order of let's say £2,500, along with all the other factors I've just mentioned, the total comes to £4,597. Now if we consider the initial startup cost, you can really start to see the difference between the two options. It just goes to show that even if you have a small budget, you can still start selling a product through Amazon FBA for under £1,500 and then grow your business from there and start investing in other products and growing yourself as a business. Anyway, that wraps up the end of this video. Be sure to subscribe for more and leave a thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed it. I'd really appreciate any support with this channel. If you are interested in Amazon FBA, be sure to check out my online course, the FBA Series, which will guide you through the whole process from start to finish on how to start selling on Amazon. Anyway, with all that being said, thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.